Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar today, which is Substantiating Claims for Baby and Childcare. So we'll basically be looking at baby and childcare products, how they're advertised and the kind of evidence you're going to need to support those claims. Sue was going to join for an introduction, but unfortunately she can't make it today, so I'll be doing the introduction. So basically we've been launching this series of webinars, as some of you know, I know a lot of you have joined a lot of these, just to really summarize a lot of the advertising standards that are out there, and especially at a time right now when everyone is selling online. There's kind of new markets emerging that you didn't really necessarily know that you were going to be entering until this time. So it's really important to know about the global legislation out there, and all the regulations that are involved within advertising and marketing. But obviously it's a really good time to step back as well and look at the evidence that you have behind your products and think about whether it's enough to substantiate those claims and start protecting yourself against any kind of scrutiny you might come under if people were to challenge your claims on your products at all. So today we're really specifically going into baby and childcare. This has kind of been a huge market for us as a consumer testing house, and it's been something that's been growing over a lot of years. It's something we've always tested, but it's certainly something we've noticed a lot of more product development in. Lots more kinds of products that are out there. So basically we kind of wanted to summarize what kind of evidence we've had to gather in the past, the kind of testing regulations we've had to be challenged with, and again the advertising standards that you'll need to be aware of. So I have got actually an agenda here before I go off on too much of a tangent. But we're going to look at advertising standards and organisations. We're going to look at consumer research specifically, because obviously that's what we as a company conduct. So we'll be really looking at what kind of claims you can make with consumer research. But obviously I'll talk about other kinds of research as well that you might need to be aware of. We talk about the legal framework for testing on children, global regulations for advertising, marketing claims for baby and childcare, and how you decide the appropriate study design and methodology, and some case studies which show how we've done that to be able to make sure your claims are substantiated and that you hold verifiable evidence behind those claims. Like I said, Susan can't make it today, but she is our founder and managing director. I'll still introduce her anyway, because I'm sure a lot of you want to be connected with her. She set up our company about 25 years ago, and basically it's just grown like crazy. We've gone from being a small sort of company in Chapter Mallet to being a global company that conducts global consumer studies. So she's got a huge amount of experience when it comes to consumer research. She's now been appointed on the committee of the Society of Cosmetic Scientists in the UK. So she's really at the forefront for what's developing in the cosmetics industry. Obviously we are all industry based, but as I'm sure a lot of you are from cosmetic companies, and I'm sure you're already aware, is that that's where you see the most claims, that's where you see the most marketing claims. It tends to be on cosmetics. So it really is a huge amount of what we're testing, and a huge amount of where the regulations are as well. So we really do focus a lot on cosmetics within these webinars, but don't worry if you're not from a cosmetic company, it's still very applicable, especially when we're talking about advertising standards. So yeah, there'll still be lots of information that will be really interesting for you. To introduce myself, I am the regulatory specialist for Ayton Global Research. So what that means is I've kind of gone from working at the company as a study manager and designing studies and running studies for clients and really understanding about that methodology. And then turning my focus towards training. I was the training director for the company. And I really found that, in training the staff and also in training our clients, there was a bit of a gap of knowledge in regulations, again, particularly in the cosmetics industry, but also generally for testing, like people not knowing how their consumer research could be used, what were the standards out there, what kind of research they needed to substantiate their claims, all of that kind of stuff. So I kind of find that gap and decided to really steer myself towards the regulatory side of what we do. And a lot of that, what is involved in that is holding these webinars, of course, and trying to educate everyone about the regulations, but also doing things like gap analysis for people. So a lot of our clients will come to us with products they already have claims on or claims they're planning to make, and they need to know what evidence they need to hold in order to make those claims. So that's kind of where my niche is. And then it's all about things like study design and questionnaire design and staying up to date with those regulations and making sure that research we're providing will always be able to be used to substantiate claims in any territory and in any and on any platform, whether that's kind of TV, online, QVC, shopping channels, that kind of thing, anything like that. So that's kind of my journey. So yeah, I've traveled globally to give lectures on this kind of topic, and in doing so I've always made sure that I'm on top of the regulations that are in the territories I've been traveling to. So I've got a pretty broad insight into regulation, so I'm kind of your go-to person at Ayton Global Research if you need any information. So we're looking at childcare today, specifically as mentioned. So I want to start off by talking about the childcare market. So I've just taken a couple of bits of market research there for you, all really accessible online. And one thing to note is that childcare and baby products is a market that is growing hugely. Really the case with a lot of personal care. It's kind of a continuous growth, but particularly for baby care and childcare, there seems to be a focus on people really taking notice of their child's hygiene and health. Whereas before, I know, I talk to my parents, they say, you never used to use products on babies. It was always just water. Whereas now we're finding that, people are wanting to use more toiletries on their children. And they've got really big benefits as well. Lots of the sort of products are out there to help with a lot of sort of skin problems and hygiene problems that children have, that, are continuously growing, and there's continuous looking at these problems and creating products for them. There does seem to be an increase in children, basically. I can't think of the word exactly, but it's a growing population, sorry. It's a growing population. There's a lot of children growing, especially in the Asia Pacific region, as mentioned by Model Intelligence. So obviously, there's more production going on when it comes to children. There also seems to be a focus on things like natural care. That's kind of a growing sector anyway in any personal care, but it does seem to be focused on children as well, because obviously people are very conscious of the products they're using on their children. As mentioned, we're probably in a time where people are using more products on their children, but because of that, they want to make sure that they're really safe for their child to use. So there seems to be this kind of real focus on the ingredients, things being natural, things being organic. That's kind of where the market seems to be growing. Baby diapers also, or nappies, they are still the biggest market share in the world, and I will be sharing a case study about a nappy pant study that we did as well, to give you some ideas of that. So that's kind of the overall picture of the baby care market. I also want to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on childcare and baby care products. I think it's really important, as I was saying in these lectures, I'm not going to ignore the fact that COVID-19 is out there and it's having an impact on this industry, on all industries. It absolutely is, and it's really important to recognise that. But what's interesting with childcare as opposed to other industries and other product categories is that actually there has been, there's actually been a huge sellout essentially in baby care products, particularly, especially with nappies and wipes and things like that, as said in these kind of bits of market research I've gathered here. There was that huge, bulk buy. Everyone went crazy, panic bought stuff, nappies in particular, wipes. Still can't get wipes now. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I'm still really struggling to buy wipes, just general use in the supermarkets. So yes, it's all been a bit crazy in terms of that, which has been really good for the industry. So people like Kimberly Clark, the Honest Company, have said they've got a huge surge in demand. And they've also looked at, companies like them have looked at putting in partnerships with charities to then provide, invest that extra profit they've had and provide products for people that aren't necessarily able to get hold of these products, or that are in poverty situations, which is great. And it's lovely to see the industry kind of step up to things like that, and I think that's happened a lot over the COVID-19 pandemic. So even though COVID-19 has had a huge impact on the industry, baby and childcare is where to be, essentially, if you are looking to sell products. So now I want to talk a little bit about the advertising standards and advertising regulations. So this isn't very specific to baby and childcare, This is to do with any kind of advertising, basically. We're looking globally as well. So I won't go into too much detail for the different countries because obviously there's a lot, but I just want to give you guys an overview of how to find out about the advertising standards in the territory you want to sell in, because everybody's different, but they do tend to have shared values. And it's really important to know if you're selling online and you've got lots of people buying from lots of different countries around the world, you're going to need to satisfy their advertising standards. Otherwise, you could be open to a lot of trouble, essentially. It can range from things like having your adverts removed to up to things like really massive fines. And you could even have lawsuits. So in a place like America, if you've got misleading claims on your adverts, you can even be sued. So it's really, really important to be aware of where you're selling. It doesn't mean that you're not satisfying the marketing regulations in that territory. You may find that because you've got evidence from another country, it is satisfying those marketing claims. Not always, but it might be. But it's just important to be aware and educated and informed about where you're sitting within compliance of your claims, essentially. So I want to start off by talking about the International Chamber of Commerce, because they've got a self-regulatory framework which countries can adopt, basically, and have as a self-regulatory system. So basically it's in 42 countries so far. And a lot of those are the main countries that you'll find, sort of the big FMCG countries. And essentially it just ensures that there's a legal, honest, decent and truthful communication within advertising by anyone who adopts their framework. So that's really interesting. Basically, I always think of it as a good starting point. If you're looking at advertising in a country or looking about the advertising situation in that country, you can look at the ICC, see the countries that have adopted their framework, and kind of go from there. If your country that you're looking at isn't part of the ICC framework, then you need to look somewhere else. But it kind of gives you an idea of who's got the same values and who's looking at the same kind of code of conduct. And in talking about that, we've also got the International Council on Ad Self-Regulation, ICAS. So basically they were set up by the European Advertising Standards Alliance. So anyone who advertises in the EU, they're really important to know about the EASA. But they set up ICAS as a kind of council for all of the different SROs, self-regulatory organizations, in Europe, and it's grown to a global sort of situation. So as mentioned, start off with the ICC, see who's adopted the framework. Everyone who's a part of ICAS has adopted that framework, so it's a really important thing to note there. And it's global, so there's lots of different territories that aren't part of the EU that are all part of ICAS, but they all share the same kind of code of conduct. If there's any updates to codes that they think everyone should apply, they will do. They always release news about certain things they've kind of talked to the council about, doing in their own country, any updates to ad regulation. So they're a really important place to look if you're looking at ad standards. Now, it's not going to be completely global. It doesn't have every single country, but it's got a lot of countries that you're probably marketing in. It also means they've got kind of their database, so you can have a look on the database and check who the SRO is in the specific territory. It's a really easy way to find it, instead of kind of trawling through the web and making sure you've got the correct kind of code of conduct to look at. So basically start with the ICC, then go to ICAS, have a look at the SROs and see who's on there. Just because a SRO isn't on ICAS doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So that's something really important to know. It's not the kind of do-all and end-all. It's just a really good starting point for a search kind of mechanism. So now I kind of want to get more granular and talk about the SROs that are in different countries, apart from the FTC, and I'll talk about them a little bit in a sort of bit more detail in a second. So I've just kind of drawn people from different territories, sort of worldwide. So we've got the UK, it's got the ASA, the Advertising Standards Authority. I think most countries know about the ASA anyway, because they're a real kind of leading body when it comes to advertising standards. They have a really, really good code of conduct. So there's something really good to look at. And again, they're kind of probably one of the strictest, not in terms of the penalties they give, but in terms of the investigations they do into claims. So as long as you're satisfying the ASA's code of conduct, if you're a UK company, which I know a lot of you are, you're probably going to satisfy most others as well. Just because you're satisfying a code of conduct with your claims doesn't mean they're applicable in all territories as well. And that's something really important to note when I'm talking about this. Just because you've looked at the code of conduct and you've gone, okay, well, our claims satisfy them, the evidence we have behind our claims, doesn't mean you're going to satisfy every country still, because there's still different ambient temperatures and skin types in every territory. You can't sort of have a claim for the UK and then say, okay, we're going to sell it in China now with that evidence as well. Not necessarily, because there could be real changes in the ambient temperature, the marketing preferences, even the language, the way the claims are understood. There's a lot of differences. So know about the different SROs, know about the different marketing code of conducts, the advertising standards, but don't feel like just because you satisfy one advertising standard, you're going to satisfy them all with your evidence, because it's the evidence that matters. So I'll talk about that again. So I will try not to tangent off too much today. Got so much to talk about. So we've got the ASA in the UK. We've got South Africa's got the Advertising Regulatory Board, ad standards in Australia. Brazil's got the National Advertising Self-Regulatory Council. So these are all SROs in their territory. Now, their main kind of job that they do is to take complaints. So it could be a complaint from your consumer that's purchased your product and isn't satisfied with the results against the claims that you've made about your product, or it could be against your competitor if they think that your claims may not have evidence behind them. If they think, well, we haven't managed to claim that about our product, so how come you have? Or you're competing against them and you've kind of, outright said who they are, you might find you're going to have a complaint about your product. So the consumer or the competitor will complain to the Advertising Self-Regulatory Organisation, which are the ones that I've listed on here, or they're a part of ICAS or anything like that. And that SRO will come to you and ask, investigate it. So usually it's about asking you for the evidence behind your claim. If you can present your evidence straight away and say, yep, this is the evidence we've got, and they're satisfied with it, the complaint will not be upheld and you'll be able to continue going as you were. If they find that the evidence is not satisfactory, then there's quite a few different kind of punishments involved. The first instance is always removing the advert from any kind of advertising platform. And as mentioned, it can range to sort of more serious consequences in some territories, being fines and lawsuits. So always really important to make sure you have that evidence. But that's what the SROs are doing, basically. They're basically a complaint system. They're making sure that there is a place where everyone can complain and they will investigate those complaints for you. The FTC is slightly different because they are a federal organization. So in America, they don't have, they have an SRO actually. They have an SRO framework, which is the Better Business Bureau national programs. But they're not the ones that you can complain to them, but they're not the ones that kind of, they don't take the action. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, are the people that accept complaints and then investigate the kind of problems, but they also police adverts. They are making sure that there is no, misleading advertising, offensive advertising in their country, and making action against that. They do also do things globally as well. So the FTC act globally. If you are if there's an import coming in, to the US, they'll investigate everything as well. So they're just really important to be aware of, because when you look, like I said, you're looking at a federal level. Then the FTC are people, they help support things like lawsuits. So if there's lots of complaints coming in about a product, that they may help with a lawsuit as well. So yes, really important to note the kind of difference there between the other SROs, self-regulatory, and the federal ones like the Federal Trade Commission. There's also the National Media Council in the UAE, and they are also federal as well. So it's not just the USA, there's other territories as well. So again, when you're researching these, when you're looking at selling in these territories, always look at whether it's a federal or whether it's just a self-regulatory system, because it will have different impacts on the kind of punishments out there for misleading advertising. There's also laws. So as I mentioned, the UAE's got the National Media Council. So they're enforcing the penalties about any kind of printed matters, printed publications. So that's just one of the laws they're including. Sorry, it's actually on all platforms. You've also got the FDA in the USA, so they're actually helping write the laws to protect the consumers if they find that an ingredient has had kind of negative effects in cosmetics or something like that. They'll ban that ingredient from being used. And again, there's lots of places, there's lots of organizations like that in other countries. And China also restated the advertising law of the People's Republic of China in 2015, which has strengthened the consumer perception and has made sure there's tougher rules and penalties for advertisers. So even if there is or there isn't an SRO in that territory or advertising standards organization, you need to be aware of the laws as well. A lot of these are written into law in every country, but they might not have an SRO, but they have laws. And obviously it's really important to know about that, because you're, at this point, it's, your adverts not just being withdrawn, it could be illegal, which could have really tough penalties. So really be aware of the laws in the territory that you're selling. Just talking about cosmetic compliance. So as mentioned, this is going to be quite a cosmetic heavy in terms of regulations and presentation. And I just want to bring up the cosmetic compliance for children, because it's something to be really, really important, really knowledgeable. If you're creating cosmetics, obviously it's always important to make sure your product's not going to have any undesirable events, but particularly when we're talking about baby and children. So there's kind of tougher regulations in terms of the ingredients that can be used. Got to make sure that there is no toxic ingredients, allergens, and that they've got a really low amount of preservative, because obviously there will almost definitely be some kind of preservative in your cosmetics, but it's making sure it's got the lowest effective concentrations. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware of that if you're making baby products anyway. But this is more people if you're looking at making cosmetic baby products. There is the Council of Europe Committee of Experts on Cosmetic Products has a kind of guide which is called the Safe Cosmetics for Young Children, a guide for manufacturers and safety assessors. So I really want to just point your kind of attention in the direction of that. If you don't know much about manufacturing cosmetics for children and how they should be safety tested, that's about the safety testing as well. That's just a really helpful tool that you can use. So I just want to put your sort of kind of guidance there. So now I'm going to talk about consumer research, which is what Ayton Global Research conduct. It's where my speciality lies. So basically, when we're talking about consumer research, for substantiating claims, we are talking about anything that is a consumer perception claim. So we're not talking about scientific claims or instrumental studies. These aren't things that can be measured. They're subjective, they're not objective claims. So you may find that there's a lot of claims that you can make just supported by consumer research evidence. You may find that you need to use clinical evidence for some claims. But often when you have clinical evidence or scientific evidence behind the claim, you also need consumer research evidence to ensure that the consumers can perceive that effect with their naked eye. So it's really important to be aware of. A lot of people think they need clinical evidence as well, or scientific evidence for certain claims when they might not. And actually consumer research is a much kind of cheaper and quicker route to go to substantiate your claims. It's very broad as well. There's a lot of things you can say with consumer research because it's subjective that you can't say with clinical research. So things like, I would buy this product, I would recommend this product, everything like that. Obviously you can only get that. That's not scientific. You can only get that through consumer research. So I just always really want to educate people on the options that are available when it comes to testing. I will always be very honest with you. I know we don't conduct the scientific evidence ourselves, but as mentioned earlier, when I do my gap analysis on your products and I check to see, what claims you have and what kind of evidential support you need, I'll be very honest. If I think you need instrumental studies or scientific studies as well, we will do that. We will make sure that we have partners out there that can conduct those tests. So don't feel like if you come to me, I'm only going to tell you consumer research and it's not going to be satisfactory for your claims, because I will always make sure we give you the best evidence possible. It's really in our best interest to make sure that your claims are compliant in the territories that you want to sell. So we're looking at consumer perception anyway. Now, most of the time they're in-home studies that we're conducting, which is where a participant is sent the product to test it at home, and they test it at home and then answer online questionnaires. They might do things like photo uploads, they might do things like video uploads, but generally what we're looking at is replicating the real use of the product. So when your consumer purchases a product on the shelves, they don't then get dermatologists to apply it to their skin for them every 3 to 4 hours. They follow the usage directions that you have on your product, and that is how they use the product. So that's what we do. We provide them with the usage directions that you want on your product when you're going to send it out on the shelves, and they're going to use it in that exact way. So your data is incredibly valid in terms of how the end user will actually assess your product. Again, you don't get that through clinical studies. So another reason why it's really important to back up your scientific evidence with consumer research. So they may be testing the efficacy of a product most of the time, but they could also be comparing products. So we do comparison studies as well. So that could be looking at, a competitor's product, comparing it against a competitor. And it could also be things like comparing it against another formula. And it could be, however many products as you like. It hasn't got to be 1 or 2. They can test up to, however many products are kind of acceptable without a consumer's head blowing up because they've had to test too many products and give too much feedback. So why conduct consumer research? So obviously I've talked about claim substantiation and testing the product's efficacy. So does it actually do what you want it to do? That doesn't have to be kind of at the end of your product development. You can be sending out products at any point. As long as they've had a safety assessment and they're safe to use, people can start giving you feedback as you're developing your products. And this can be really important for things like fragrance and appearance, all those kinds of sensory claims that you have about your product. They can be really good to get feedback on before you're kind of looking at the end claim substantiation. You're ensuring that your product is regulatory and legally compliant in your chosen markets. So obviously if you want to sell lots of different global territories, we can select key markets that reflect all of those territories, key territories that reflect all those markets, and make sure that your claims are going to be substantiated there. That's also really important for finding out the product acceptability and the propensity to buy in those countries. So it's not just about your efficacy claims. You want to get that marketing feedback as well. I know that we've had a few situations where the usage directions have had to be changed in different markets. So someone who was selling in the UK, we did a cleansing balm. People in the UK are really used to using cleansing balms. It's quite a common product. But we sent them to China and they didn't, because of the usage directions that were provided, they weren't very clear because that's what was going to be on the pack copy. It's what was already on the pack copy in the UK. But they were kind of like, I don't really know the effect that I'm supposed to be feeling from this. I've not used cleansing balm before. Should my skin feel drier? Should it feel should I let the dirt's removed? Should it feel greasy? Anything like that. They kind of didn't really understand what the end effect was supposed to be. So it didn't matter. They still had good results. It just meant that when they released their product there, they could really look at changing those usage directions and making sure that the consumer wouldn't complain about their product, and that they'd sell more products because people really understood it. You can also look at targeting your key demographic and finding out, who your product suits, whether that's skin types, hair types, everything like that. So there's a lot of basically really think of it as research as well. I always say that to my clients in terms of, don't think of it just as, does the product do what I want it to do? Yes or no? Does it pass? Do my claims pass? And research a product. Be interested. What do people think about my product? What can I do to improve it? Is there anything that I'm missing here that's kind of been overseen in the research and development process? So yeah, really research it as well. Don't just see it as I need to get evidence to substantiate my claims, although that's very important. What kind of claims can you get from consumer studies? I've just kind of picked up a few kind of baby care and childcare products claims, sorry, that you can have in your products. So things like 88% of people agree their baby's nappy rash was improved. 9 out of 10 people would recommend this product to other families. 96% of people agree that this product is suitable for their child's sensitive skin. These are all the kinds of claim wordings that you might find that you get from consumer research. So cosmetic claims, again, this is cosmetic heavy, but this is very applicable to any other industry as well. And it's what are the common criteria for these cosmetic claims? So the EU the EU Cosmetic Products Regulation has laid out 6 common criteria for cosmetics claims, which I would always keep in mind anyway for any industry. These are legal compliance. So basically your product must comply with the legal requirements in that territory. And you can't say it on your product as a claim either. So you can't say it complies with EU regulations. It has to. So it's kind of an unfair claim, because obviously you're kind of saying that our product does it, but actually every product in the market has to comply with legal regulations. They must be truthful. You can't say this product has vitamin C in it if it doesn't. That's not true at all. You need to have evidential support. So every single claim out there in the market, no matter what claim it is, it has to have evidential support. Cannot stress that enough. It needs to be honest. You can't say 80% of 200 people agreed with this claim when the study was only conducted on 100 people. So that would be a complete lie. Again, you need to be really honest with your products there. Fairness, you can't compare, say, if you were looking at a baby product and you wanted to compare baby oil and a baby lotion and say that the oil was more effective at moisturizing or something like that, because you can't compare an oil and a lotion. They're 2 completely different products. You'd have to compare a lotion with a lotion or an oil with an oil. And you need to make it really clear that the consumer can have informed decision making. So this means making sure your claims are very well worded, that they're truthful, basically everything like that, so that when they pick up your product, they can make an informed decision that is correct about purchasing your product. Types of claims that you've got out there. So the CTPA, which is the Cosmetics, Toiletry and Perfumery Association, they're an incredibly helpful research when it comes to guidance for claims for cosmetics, by the way. And if you're not a member, I would recommend being a member if you're part of the cosmetics industry. But again, these are also a good breakdown for any kind of industry as well, kind of breakdown of claims. So you've got your sensory and your product aesthetic claims. They're all about the look, the feel of the product. The product aesthetics can go into the packaging as well. Your performance claims, so it's like your efficacy claims. Does the product do what it says it does? Does the baby lotion moisturize your baby's skin? Does the cradle cap shampoo help with cradle cap? Everything like that. Your ingredient claims, so that's things like the product contains anti-inflammatory turmeric or something like that. That's all to do with the ingredient. Combination claims, this shampoo works best when used with this conditioner. Products must be tested together in order to make those claims. Comparison claims, so as mentioned, that could be against a competitor. It could be new and improved formula. Again, you need to have a product which test which compares the products in order to make those claims. Your subjective claims, which are the consumer perception, it's everything we do for consumer research. And your objective claims, which is the objective evidence, so scientific research and instrumental studies. So those are the types of claims you can make, and we can use consumer research for absolutely every single type of those, apart from objective claims, which would be your scientific claims. So really important to keep in mind when you're making your claims, kind of going through a guidance, where does this fit within that framework, and what kind of evidence do I need to support my claims? So where do you see these claims? I think that's always really important thing to kind of like contextualize it, basically. These are the kind of claims you can make. Now, where can you advertise them? So advertising claims can be anywhere. Advertising claim is anything that's in the product, in the public domain. So it could be TV, it could be online, it could be magazines, radio, print media, anywhere that you are, social media, anywhere you're putting your claims, that is an advert. And it all needs substantiation. And consumer research can be used to substantiate claims on all of those platforms as well. But I wanted to get some examples for you. So we've got claims online. So all of these products have got some kind of proven claims on their website. So we've got some products from Mistela, Baby Kingdom, Weleda, all about the kind of claims that support their product, and some of them have quoted what percentage exactly, whereas others just kind of give the claims there. You can do both as long as you've got evidence to support it, and you must mention somewhere on your website where the claims have come from. So is it an independent study, who is the research provider, and how many people tested the product in that test. Claims on TV as well. So you need to have some kind of evidential support to be even allowed to put your claims on television. But most of the time you'll see claims, you'll kind of see that support on the on the TV advert. So for example, we've got a Johnson & Johnson advert where they're saying doctors #1 recommended, and then it says about the study that's taken part, that the study which has been used to substantiate that claim. Boots advert, 61% of 307 mums agreed. So whatever they're talking about on that advert, whatever claim they're mentioning, they've got that support on the claim there as well. And I didn't have the text come, the lower third come on the bottom one here, but I just wanted to give you an example of how the claims might appear on screen if you're looking at it. It's quite hard to get the TV adverts for one online because nobody really wants to see TV adverts online necessarily. So I've tried to get the ones which have the lower third there, but just know that they all need to have that on there. Claims are also on labels and packaging. So this is something that gets forgotten about a bit. People think, if I haven't got an advert online, if I haven't got claims on TV, surely I don't need any claim substantiation. Well, you do, because even your claims on your packaging are claims that need to be substantiated. So I took this kind of bit of news from ICAS, which again is that council of all those different SROs, basically where they're saying that, you know, it's something they haven't really necessarily looked at before in terms of advertising, but they've really, you know, over the last few years found that actually people are complaining about the adverts that are actually on the packaging rather than what's been put in the public domain, and that they need evidence behind them. So people, you know, it's really important to note that there's been a big drive at the moment in looking at the claims that are on packaging as well, because essentially they're an advert. I always say, if there's a consumer in a store maybe looking to purchase 2 different baby powders, and they're looking at the claims on the product, you know, that's what they're going to look at when they're comparing which one to purchase. You know, what does this one do compared to that one? They're adverts, and if they're not satisfied by what's said on your packaging when they've purchased it, it's not fair on them, it's misleading. So always be cautious of your labels as well when you're looking at claim substantiation. Now I'm going to take us through some case studies. So I've got 2 different case studies today. I'm looking at one that's a childcare product and one that's a baby care product, just to give you guys an idea and contextualize everything I've talked about. We've talked about our advertising standards, we've talked about consumer research, and we've talked about where you see the claims. Now I want to give you some idea of how you design a study, or how we design a study, in order to make sure we have that verifiable, independent evidence needed to substantiate your claims. So the first product we're looking at is an aloe vera shampoo. This is from a childcare brand who's always looking at creating child products that are suitable for all ages or skin conditions, skin sensitivities, things that are really common in children. So the objective for this was to gather evidence to support all of the cosmetic claims in their relevant markets. And in particular, we're substantiating the claims that the product is suitable for the target age ranges, which included newborns, and that it's suitable for sensitive and eczema-prone skin. So I really wanted to bring this one up as an example because just to give you a kind of idea of how important it is to know your target demographic, but also to show you that we can substantiate claims and we can test on children who have sensitive and eczema-prone skin. We have got one of the largest child panels in the world, and baby panels in the world. We have one of the best experience for testing baby care, and we're completely legally and compliantly able to. We have an informed consent process which every guardian has to go through, parent or guardian has to go through to ensure we can test on their children. And there are some kind of terms and conditions clauses in there that we have developed over the years for global studies to make sure that the children are protected that we're testing on, but also that our clients are protected. But there is always an informed consent process there. So it's really important for people to, I think people always are kind of surprised when they know that we can test on newborn babies, but we can, as long as the product has been formulated for newborns and it's had a safety assessment to say it's safe to use in those newborns. We have done all the other processes to make sure that the children are allowed to be signed up to the study. So there's quite a bit of a collaboration in terms of making sure these are safe here. So yes, and also things like sensitive skin and eczema prone skin, these are really important to target as well. Please bear in mind this is self-assessed, but self-assessed is very important. People kind of say, well, it's not sensitive skin technically if they're self-assessed, but this is another important thing about consumer research. How many people in the market are purchasing a sensitive skin product who have had professionally assessed skin? I don't think there are a lot of them. I've got eczema prone skin and I've got sensitive skin because of that, but I've never had someone diagnose me. I know that my skin's sensitive because I get eczema. So I will only purchase products which are suitable for sensitive skin. And there are a lot of people like me out there. I've got a lot of friends that I don't necessarily think have sensitive skin diagnosed, but they get irritations to products if they've got a high level of perfume or anything like that in there, so they'll purchase products that are suitable for sensitive skin. So self-assessed sensitive skin and eczema prone skin is a really important thing to look at as a demographic for testing products. And in terms of an exclusion as well, so always think about it as an exclusion as well if you know your product's not suitable for sensitive skin. So what's the legislation behind the product we want to test and the adverts we want to make? So as this product is for the EU market, we're looking at the EASA. So the EASA are essentially saying that you need to have some kind of documentary evidence for direct or implied claims. So that's really important as well. People forget about the implied claims that are made as well. So they go, okay, well, I've got a shampoo, I've got baby lotion, let's say baby lotion. I've got baby lotion, but I'm not going to make any claims about my product because I know I don't have substantiation behind them. Well, you have called it baby lotion. You are suggesting as an implied claim there that the product is going to moisturize the skin because it's a lotion. You need to have some substantiation. So you always need to have evidence behind your product, no matter what kind of claims you're making. But also, who's going to purchase the product that says baby lotion and next to the product that says 90% of women agree that this made their baby's skin the most luxuriously soft it's ever felt? You're going to purchase the product that has more claims on it. But either way, you need to have evidence. You also need to be able to provide that evidence without delay to the relevant SRO. So again, it's really important to make sure that you have this evidence before your product's launched on the market. If you don't have it, we can look at substantiating the claims you already have on your product. There's a risk that you won't match those claims, you won't pass the claims, because if you haven't already substantiated them, there's, generally you're safe, but obviously there's always a risk if you go market first then substantiation. Always go substantiation first and then market. But never panic. If you've gone the other way around, feel free to reach out and we can always help with some kind of evidential support. So what's the protocol? So obviously it's we conducted it in the UK, English, because that was their biggest market, but because the ambient temperature and skin type is very similar throughout the rest of EU, the efficacy claims are still compliant. It's just important to note that if you've got marketing claims, they may not be. For example, we've had kind of clients that want to get claims about what they would recommend or buy this product, and we always say, well, maybe test it in other parts of the EU and don't rely on the efficacy claims from the UK, because for example, your UK mums might recommend the product, but maybe the German mums wouldn't necessarily. So it's always important to think about the marketing claims as well, but just for the efficacy claims, which we were looking at for this study, it's absolutely fine to satisfy your EU claims with the UK market. So there's a single placement study because we're just investigating one product. It's a 2-week study, so giving them enough time to use the product. I haven't even put what the product is. It's a shampoo. Sorry. It's a shampoo. So yeah, we can use a shampoo for 14 days and know that it's going to be enough uses to be able to have a really good evaluation of the product. It's female and male because we're looking at babies and children. So generally, there's not a huge distinction between our genders in terms of products we're looking at. You know, especially at this kind of age, a newborn baby, the products are going to have very similar effect, whether it's female or male. So 50% of them were 1 to 3 months old because they were newborns, and 50% of them were 3 years old, were under 3 years old, sorry, but they also had to have sensitive and eczema prone skin. They all had to currently use the shampoo because it's really important for them to be able to assess the product and also kind of compare it against what they usually use. So I think a lot of people like to do that in consumer research. There's kind of a benchmark then for the consumer when they're evaluating the product. It also needs to be national, so we don't kind of close in and say, okay, we're only going to look at people in London. We want to reflect the whole of the UK within under the study, so it can be really reliable evidence. So what were the results? So I have lifted this from a couple of examples of the questions from our report. So our reports are in real time. What that means is you haven't got to wait for us to analyse the results and provide you a final report. It's all built into our system, all of the statistical analysis. So as soon as people start answering the questionnaire, you can view the report online and you'll see all of the statistical analysis as it's happening. This means that we kind of allow for a certain amount of time, about 7 days, to get the minimum responses at the end of the study. But if everyone goes on and answers the questionnaire within 2 days, you can just download your report and start using it straight away. So it's really important. Again, this is the FMCG sector that we tend to be working in the most, and fast moving. It's fast moving goods, so people need their results quickly. So we break down every single question separately, but I really wanted to look at the summary table for the purpose of the presentation, because it's the thing that we're looking at when we're looking at claim substantiation. So we've got the questions on the left-hand side. So I've taken a few questions from the report to give you an idea. We've got the number of people that are satisfied, the number of people who have a neutral response to the question, and the number of people that are not satisfied. We then have the percentage of people that are satisfied. So that's going to be your claim, the percentage neutral and percentage not satisfied. So when I say it's going to be your claim, you can get the percentage of people that say satisfied. 92% of people say that their shampoo gently cleanses their child's delicate hair. It's as simple as that to take your claims from your report with us. So as you can see, they've also all got little asterisks by them. That's because they have achieved their pass rate. So pass rate is usually set at 66%. So 66% of people should agree with a claim because that's a statistical majority. However, a lot of people do like to set that as 70 because that is the pass rate allowed for television in the UK and in most countries, and for some of our advertising platforms. So you may find that you want to set that a bit higher. It's all internal for you. Whatever you need your pass rate to be, that'll get set, and it will asterisk every single claim that passes. So obviously this one passed all of these claims and some really high results as well. So 70% is really good, which is why they allow it on things like TV. 80% is great, and 90% is just excellent. So we've got some amazing claims on this product. The next study I want to talk about is a nappy pants study. So this was by a contract manufacturer who specialise in baby hygiene, feminine hygiene, and the protection of incontinent adults. So all things like nappies and incontinence pads, anything to do with absorption and leakage really. So we're looking at nappy pants. Now, this is a bit of a different study. I really wanted to bring this one up because we're looking at a comparison for this study. So I've talked about that a bit earlier on about benchmarking. And so this is a really important study to talk about to kind of put that into context. So you can use this methodology for any kind of product, but we're talking about specifically nappies. So there was the aim of the study was to evaluate 4 products, 3 of their own brands that they've manufactured against a competitor benchmark. They want to see how their new concept performed. They all were looking at the main efficacy claims, which are to do with leakage, absorption, and fit. So really important things when you're looking at nappies. The legislation behind this one. So we're talking about comparison studies here. So I've taken this information from the Advertising Standards Authority, the ASA. They've said that more complex comparisons, such as comparisons of market-wide of the efficiency of products and price comparison need to involve a large amount of technical evidence. So you need to get a lot of consumer research behind you to ensure that there's a statistical significance behind every efficacy claim when you're evaluating how the product has performed. So you will always need a lot of evidence behind any kind of comparison claim, particularly when you're looking at competitor claims as well. The ASA actually have loads of information about competitor claims, so they're a really good place to look if you are thinking of doing this. But even if you're not looking at the competitor, naming the competitor outright, you might want to say something like better than the leading brand. It's really important to make sure you have lots and lots of evidence behind you. It's also really important for market research and understanding of product development. So you can have a look at that as well in terms of, not just the claims, just, understanding where your product sits within your market. It's really important. So this particular study design that we were looking at, again, it was UK English, because we're looking at a UK a brand that we're looking at comparing. It's a quadruple placement because we're looking at comparing 4 products. The study ran for 28 days because we had a week per product, so a week per brand, if you like, with a lot of different products. Nappy studies are always quite funny for us because obviously there's a lot of nappies needed when you're looking at testing disposable nappies. So yes, we have a lot of nappies come in. Our packing manager's usually up to her ears in nappies, selling at about sort of 40 of each nappy, and they're all getting 4 brands, so it's always quite fun. So yeah, they had 4 different brands using one per week. The children had to already wear nappy pants because it's really important that they were wearing something they were used to wearing. We had 25% of the boys who wear competitor brand, 25% girls who wear the competitor brand, and the 25% of the boys who wear their own retail brand, and 25% of girls that wear their own retail brand. So we've got a really nice split of volunteers there to really start assessing the results. So we can break it up. You can look at just the girls, you can look at just the boys, you can look at just the people that use the competitor brand, you can look at just people that use the retail brand, or you can look at the results overall. So you can really start thinking about breaking down results in terms of how you want to view it. So there's slightly different statistic here, slightly different analysis I want to talk about, not just the summary table when it comes to claims. When you're looking at comparisons, we use a two key test to be able to analyze the difference between the products. So in this example that I've taken from the report, this is just a really small clip of the analysis, but it gives you an idea. So the question was the absorption capacity of the nappies, of the pants is very high. We've got our product codes there. So we've got our 4 product codes. We had 86% of people answer it. And the 2 key test basically shows us that, so the mean average is needs to differ by more than 0.5483% to say there is a significant difference between the absorption of the nappy pants. So as we can see in this example, the mean difference between product 1, which is the bottom, and product 4 differs by much more than that. So product 4 is significantly better than product 1 when it comes to absorption. And you can do that for each product and for each question. So that's what we're looking at. When we're looking at a competitor claim, there has to be a significant difference between those products to be able to make a claim that you're better. So it doesn't matter. I mean, for example, 1 and 2, you can say, okay, well, the mean average for sample 2 is higher than sample 1, but it's not by enough. It needs to be significantly different to be able to make that claim. So that's why I wanted to bring up that little bit of the report there. We've also got our summary report as well. So obviously in this case, we have the claim for every single product. So you can see it's the same question, but we've got each product listed there. Now in the satisfied column, you can see the real difference. Let's get back. You can see the real difference between product 1 and product 4 as well, in terms of the percentage of people that agreed with it. Product 1 and 2 didn't pass the claim, and products 3 and 4 did. So if you imagine, if one of them's the competitor claim that's lower, okay, you know you're way better than the competitor claim. Or if the competitor claim is the highest one, you could say, okay, well, samples 1 and 2 haven't compared, so let's go with sample 3. That's going to be the one that we're going to launch because it's not as good as a competitor brand, but it's still a pass. It's still a pass, and it's still 70%, so we can still launch it. So there's so much I could talk about when it comes to comparative studies, but it's just to give you an overview, really, and just start thinking, about how if you want to make these kind of claims, what kind of evidence you need. I also want to talk about, now I talked about the examples of the good claims and how you substantiate those. I also want to talk about some examples of bad claims or bad adverts. What I mean by that is I'm not saying that these examples don't have the necessary, like they've done anything wrong, they haven't necessarily meant to do something wrong, they haven't meant to mislead. They just don't have the evidence behind their claims to actually be able to make these claims, or they haven't got the correct evidence. So, for example, we've brought up L'Oreal's sun cream advert. So this one was saying that it's got a 5-star UVA rating. But actually it was misleading because they only had 3-star before. So it sounds like it's better than the 3-star, but it's actually the same level. They've just increased their rating system from 3-star to 5-star. So that was the issue there. So again, it wasn't malicious. They didn't mean to mislead. It was just, it looked like they were misleading their consumers into purchasing the new product. The baby bottle, so it's a Philips baby bottle. So what had happened is the clinical research, the claim they'd given had given the impression that it was for babies of all ages, but actually the evidence they had was for only babies at 2 weeks of age. So again, really important to know about wording your claims. They had evidence to support their claim, but it just wasn't clear in their advertising what the age range was for the product. We've also got an example of Cow & Gate formula milk, where they were talking about the nutritional value and the boosting of immune systems, and they just felt like they didn't have the evidential support behind that claim as well. So they're just examples of products that have been banned. This mainly, I'm bringing this up because it's the bad press. It's not that I think these companies are bad or malicious or anything like that. It's that the press that you get from not having claim substantiation, even if it's completely innocent, can be really bad and really bad on your brand. So it's really important to make sure that you do have those claims substantiated before they go in the market and before you get complaints about them. So there's kind of the overview of claims and substantiation and what we do. So now I've kind of told you what we do and how we do it. Why should you use us instead of any other kind of research agency? So I haven't talked a lot about cosmetics, the undesirable event reporting, sorry. So we have got undesirable event reporting built into our software. So when you conduct a study with us, there's like an underlying level, which means that a volunteer can answer if they've had an undesirable event at any point during the study. This is really, really important because even though your products have been safety assessed before they come to us, when you're looking at a safety assessment, it's usually about 50 people that you're looking at doing a safety assessment on, whereas your consumer research could be much more than that. So what you're looking at is actually how many people after the safety assessment are going to get an undesirable event about the product, whether it's very mild or not. And do we need to address that before we put this product on the market? Do we want to kind of have that risk? I'm not talking about serious undesirable events. It's very, very unlikely you'll have a serious undesirable event at the point of consumer testing because you've already gone through those safety assessments. And I've never seen an undesirable event in the kind of 8 years that I've been at Ayton Global Research. But it's important to kind of gather that information, even about the mild effects that might come forward. And all of our reporting is done in accordance with the Cosmetic Vigilance Act. So for your safety there, you know that we're really making sure that the participants have got every opportunity for us to address their UE. Your responsible person can also have access to our software and they can see those undesirable events in real time if they need to, as well as all of your members of staff that you need to be able to see that as well. We've got full product liability insurance. So this protects us, but it also protects you. So this is for the consumer testing. So essentially when we're putting products out into our participants' hands, we're now taking liability for the undesirable effects that could happen. As mentioned, we've never had a serious undesirable effect since I've been there, but everything's in place. So if we were to have that effect, everyone is protected that's involved. We've got an ISO 9001, which is to do with our quality assurance. We've got an ISO 27001, which is to do with the GDPR. We've got our own data protection officer, and we're always ensuring that we are up to date with global data regulations and not just the GDPR. This is because we've got really sensitive data on our system from our participants. We need to make sure that data is anonymized, but it also protects you as well. And you know that every bit of data that you've got with us, you have your products, your ingredients list, anything that's really sensitive to your product development is also going to be completely regulated with global data protection regulations. And we're a partner to the Market Research Society. So you know we're following the code of conduct, and that not only is our research going to be used, but it's also ethical. That's what is really important about with the MRS, is we're making sure the research is proper and it's quality, but it's also it's ethical. Some further advice before I go into the Q&As, which is just coming up now. So we always suggest that you start your panel at 100 responses, depending on the claims that you want to make and the product type. So it could, 100 responses is a good starting point, but you may find you need more, and you may find that we don't need as much depending on the product and claims. So always ask us, but it's always something, if you're not done consumer research before, I would kind of have in your mind about 100 responses. We've talked about product liability insurance, but it's also important that you inform your product liability insurance provider that we have product liability insurance when you're doing your consumer studies. The products need to be safety tested. I have mentioned that, but it's just an important note to make. Obviously, we're putting our product in the hands of consumers as you would, of our volunteers, in the way that you would in the hands of the consumer. So it needs to be fully safety tested. The product should be debranded for claim substantiation, because you don't want to have any bias towards your brand. Then your questionnaire design should always support your claims as well, and yeah, we can help with things like questionnaire design. So always seek professional advice from us. We're always able to help when it comes to designing studies. And I think now we are on to our Q&A, so I'm going to just check now, because I think we've had a couple of questions in already. So I have one question to say, can we have a copy of this? Absolutely. I'll be sending out a link to the recording after the event. I actually didn't mention that at the beginning. I've completely forgotten to do my overall introduction, to say that this is being recorded, and I will be sending this link out to everyone who is registered to the event straight afterwards. So we've got a couple of questions in right now. So if we obtain an answer with 50% positives and 50% negatives, could we claim it? An interesting question. So technically, depending on the advertising platform and depending on the regulations in the country that you're in, you could say 50% is a majority. Well, 51%, you'd have to say at least 51% is a majority. Most advertising platforms will not accept that. And you could also get in a lot of trouble, because even if you kind of were like, okay, we're going to risk it, we've got 50%, I'm going to risk it and say we're going to put that on our pack copy and put it out into the public. Well, that's what the SROs are doing. That's what their job is to do, is to police. So when someone complains about your product, so it might not be that people notice, you might get away with it, but if someone complains about your product, and the SRO comes to you and says, okay, where's your evidence to substantiate this claim? And you say, well, we've got 50% of people agreed. They could say, do you know what, that is just not enough. So we're going to withdraw your advert. So that's why we always say is about 66% is safe, because it's a statistical majority. But I would even go higher than that, to be honest. I think for me, it's kind of being like, what's being a responsible advertiser? What's being responsible about your products? Do you really feel, happy about putting an advert out there that only has 50% of people agree with the claim? Wouldn't you rather improve your product and make sure you get those claims satisfied? So I think there's a lot of that as well, is kind of knowing what your ethics are as a company, and making sure that you have that substantiation behind it. But generally, I think if a claim doesn't pass, it's not supposed to pass. It's not supposed to be on that product. It's also really unlikely, can I say, I know that there was an example with the comparison product where they didn't get a couple of claims on there, but the other ones did. Well, that's, again, a really important part of your research to make sure the claims are passed. But generally, if the product contains the ingredients, a lot of the claims we substantiate come from ingredients to start off with. So, for example, if you've got something in there that's moisturizing, the chances are you're going to pass your moisturizing claim. It's very rare that claims don't pass unless things have gone really off tangent with marketing teams. So yeah, I think, you always look at the territories you want to sell and see what the SROs are saying about evidential support. But generally, I would recommend going for at least a 66% pass before even thinking about putting a claim out there. So I've got another question in. So, would eczema-prone skin not classify the product as medicinal rather than cosmetic? It depends on the territory, for a start. But in the UK, you're right. I'm going to use the UK for example because there's just too many to bring up otherwise. In the UK, if you say as the primary claim for the product that it's suitable for eczema, you're right, it's a medicinal product because it's for eczema skin. However, if the product has a secondary claim on there saying this product can also be used to help with eczema prone skin, it can be used as a cosmetic. So it's just understanding the difference between your primary claims and your secondary claims. It's not something I talk about an awful lot, actually, to be fair. It's probably something I should bring up a bit more often. But yeah, you can have cosmetic claims which have that have kind of medicinal claims behind them, as long as they are not the primary claims about the product. I hope that makes sense. Oh, sorry, not that one. So again, just some more information on secondary claims. So there's a lot of information about there. And actually, I mean, I won't say who you are, I'll keep you anonymized. But yeah, please feel free to reach out. We can have a call if you like at some point and talk about that more. And if anyone else wants more information on that, I can have a look into that. There are some good resources out there. I talked about the Cosmetics, Toiletries and Perfumery Association earlier. They actually have some really good information about secondary claims. But again, every claim is different. It's always easier to talk about claims specific. So that one I can easily say. I can say eczema. I've talked about that one before. But I can't kind of give a flat rule about what are primary claims and what are cosmetic claims, because it depends on the claim and it always depends on the product, which I know I always say during these webinars. So is there any more questions coming in? I'll just leave that open for a second longer before moving on. But I don't see any more coming in. And like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to email this recording link to all of you and to everyone who's registered. So yeah, what I can do is you can respond to my email directly if you've got any questions. Don't feel like pressured to answer anything now. So yeah, I'll close that off for now. But like I said, feel free to email me. We can set up a call, or I can just email you with some more information. So just to finish off today's presentation, as mentioned, Sue, our lovely founder and managing director, is now part of the Society of Cosmetic Scientists. We're all very proud. But they've got some things I want to talk about. So they've got their distance learning course, which is a recognized course in the essentials of cosmetic science. You can take part in that course no matter where you are in the world. And, you know, no matter what you're doing, basically, it's all a distance learning course. And I keep saying at the moment, I think where a lot of us are still working from home, you may find, and you can't really do things as much socially anymore, you may find that you've always had an interest in cosmetic science, and that could be something that you'd want to do now. There's also the IFSCC Congress, which is going to be in London on the 19th to the 22nd of September in 2022. It's going to be an amazing event, a global event with all of the different societies of cosmetic scientists and chemists coming together in London. So I would register your interest at that now because you'll get some more information and updates of when things are released. So there's a website link there. So thank you so much for listening today. I know I always say this at the end of my webinars, but I know that's a lot of information to take in. I do tend to pack these out a bit. I get a bit excited, so sorry about that. But I will be sending the links so you can take your time to digest the information, go through it in your own time. I hope that's been really, really helpful and insightful. I think next week we're going to be looking at online sales for our webinar. But again, you can follow us on LinkedIn because we're always putting information about new webinars out there. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.